Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I am going to be making a sandworm from Beetlejuice, if you hadn't kind of guessed that from the thumbnail. But for those of you that have no idea what a sandworm is, it's kind of like this weird desert creature that traps the dead in their specific haunted locations. So in Beetlejuice it's the house. They can't leave the house. If they leave the house, then this guy is going to get them. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be making. Without further ado, let's get started. I started by drilling a hole all the way through and into my craft mat, because that's what you should be doing, and I should have put something underneath this piece of wood. This is literally just a piece of scrap wood that I had lying around the house that I got my other half so kindly to cut into a shield shape for me. And then I covered it in some bacon bond and then covered it in my polymer clay. Using a pin tool, I am literally just going to give this entire shield like a wooden texture. I was sat there for quite some time thinking about what to actually put on it, and my first initial thought was sand, because it's a sandworm, but then I thought that's just going to look really weird, a sandy shield. So I went with wood. And then I spent ages making like these little screws and stuff that keep the floorboards down and all that sort of stuff that I'm going to completely cover up, but we all know that it's there. Look, I even use a drill bit to make the screws look more screw-like. It's clever, but there's no point. Once I've finished adding all of my wooden texture, I bunged this whole thing into the oven for its first bake. That way I wasn't going to smush any of that wooden texture when I started working on the edges, because I kind of wanted the edges to have like a stony tombstone. A stony tombstone. Like, I'm assuming all tombstones are stony, but I wanted it to have that kind of look. Normally, to get my rocky texture, I would use a rock, but I couldn't find my specific rock, so I've gone with tinfoil. Although it does the same job, really, so you don't need a very specific rock. But I like to use a specific rock, so... You don't have to use a specific rock, you can use squished up tinfoil. Then I wanted to sort of add a little bit of Tim Burton style into the board that, once again, I will completely cover up, but I took it from the Beetlejuice logo, this logo here. I thought I'll just add that on to give it a bit more, you know, Tim Burton-y style. I cover it up again. I have a habit of doing this. Once I finished adding my pointless faff detail, I bunged it all back into the oven again, just so I didn't squish that too. And then it was on to building the armature for my sandworm. I'm using steel wire, and this is why I drilled the hole right at the very beginning, so that I'd got, you know, a good anchor point to put my armature into. I do wish that I had used slightly heavy dutier, slightly thicker wire. Only because at one point he becomes very top heavy, and I was very, very concerned that he was going to break in the oven. Thankfully he didn't, but yeah, I also had to change the shape a little bit so that I could bring my sandworm down the shield, because I realised he was going to be way too far above it as well, so hence why I ended up putting loads more flowery, faffy detail into this sculpt than I had originally planned, because it was literally going to just be a sandworm to begin with, but because I had to hide armature wire because I dropped him down, I ended up adding loads more detail, you know, just to make my life a little bit harder. When you first start adding your clay to your armature, you're going to end up with like this weird lumpy bumpy mess because of the foil. If you just spend a little bit of time just adding clay as and where you kind of need it. Eventually you'll end up with a nice smooth surface. It does take a little while and you've got to be patient with yourself, but yeah, you will eventually get there to the shape that you actually want. You just kind of need to be prepared to add quite a bit or take away in some areas. And then I went on to add teeth. To do that, I've literally pre-baked loads of teeth off camera. I started adding them. You know, I was trying to do it with tweezers and make myself look all good, but it didn't kind of work out that way. And on top of that, I realised I hadn't actually made him his tongue yet, so I stopped halfway through, made him a tongue, added that, and then continued with my teeth. I then carefully sifted through my box of weird-ass bits to find him two beautiful eyes, place them down, and then do something completely different because I have no concentration skills. So yeah, I did his mouth instead. Literally made a couple of snakes and blended them in. Then I'm using this dentist tool to give the lip texture. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and then I went on to do the eyes after that. Next up was to give this fella some eyelids, that way he can blink and is not staring into space. I literally just used a tapered piece of clay, blended it in over the eye, and it kind of creates like this perfect lid. And then use a slightly chunkier bit for the under eyelid so that I could texture it to give him some eye bags. And then of course I sat there for a little while and played with him. And then it was on to creating the armature for the second mouth, or is it the first mouth? I'm assuming it would technically be the first mouth because he's the first part of the sandworm that you see. So although I'm doing it second, it's the first mouth. It's a big debate going on in my head now. Literally to do that I am using some aluminium wire and some aluminium foil. I'm going to create a clam that I can nom with for a bit. And then I'm going to cover that in clay. I figured it would be easier to work some of the detail of the first mouths in first before adding them to the sculpture, because that way I can get all the inside mouth details. However, I really wish I had used black clay for the inside because it was very difficult to paint once it was all together. But to add it to the main sculpture, I literally just sort of twisted it on and then hid all the wires with more clay. Next, I needed to add the slightly bigger teeth to the slightly bigger mush. I forgot to make slightly bigger teeth, so I had to do these ones with soft clay, which made it a lot harder. I'm not going to lie, it made it a little bit difficult because I kept squishing them. But I got there in the end, and I didn't knock them, so go me. And then literally I did the same as I did with the first mouth. I added the lips exactly the same way. I did, however, remember to pre-bake him some eyes. I might have forgotten the teeth, but I did the eyes. Mainly because he's got some weird oval-shaped eyes that I wouldn't have had in my box of random stuff. He then got the same eye bag treatment as not snake, worm. I almost said snake, he's not a snake. Worm number 1 got. And then I added a fin, because why not? Tim Burton thought that these sandworms needed fins. And then it was finally time to add the sandworm to his base. At first I did try to get him to sort of stand up, but then I realised he was really, really top heavy. If you have a look, he's very wobbly now. So I do go on to bake and bond him at the back down onto the board, covering up some more of those beautiful details that I've already made on it. And then I went on to stripe making, because why not? I did a little bit of Googling of the original puppet of the Sandworm, and it's actually got quite a bit of texture, so I ended up making like this little texture stamp to give it like this weird skin scaly texture. And then it was on to making flowers. Now, the only reason that this sculpture has flowers in the first place is because there is this tiny little bit of wire right at the back underneath that sort of S-bend of the worm that I can see a tiny bit of wire. So I have to cover it with something. So I went with flowers because I'm a girly girl and I like flowers, but I hate making them. So I'm cheating by using these silicone stamps, which give like these petal textures, makes life a lot easier, makes your sculpture look like you've spent ages on it, when in fact all you've done is smushed clay between two bits of silicone. I would highly recommend them. I will leave a link in the description as always for all the stuff that I've used on this sculpture. It also came with a cool leaf shape one as well, so I didn't have to sculpt my leaves either, which was amazingly great. Once I finished sculpting my roses, I added a few swirly, whirly, decorative fluff. And then it was time to put it into the oven and pray to the clay gods, which I'm pretty sure is this guy, with a suitable sacrifice. The whole thing came out of the oven in one piece. I was so pleased. Yeah, and then it was on to painting. I literally primered in black, then I did a dry brush in white, and then I added some of the more white bits to be whiter. And then it was on to painting. I'm using mostly Citadel and Army Painter paints, but I will leave a link once again in the description if you want to find out exactly what paints I'm using. with these last few brush strokes, that's it. That's my sandworm complete. I have thoroughly enjoyed making this video, and I really hope you have thoroughly enjoyed watching it. If you have, then please do take a moment to like, comment and subscribe if you are a new subscriber, because I love a new subscriber. And I will catch you in the next video, guys. I will see you later. Bye.
The juice is loose.